Hi, welcome to episode 240 of your favorite daily podcast, A Couple of Things, a podcast about things. Today, I'm going to talk about some interesting things that I've noticed since learning Dutch, and not about Dutch, but about languages and language learning in general. So, if you've been here for any amount of time, you will know that I am learning Dutch. This was one of my big goals for the year, to get to B2 proficiency in Dutch, and I'm currently rounding up B1. And something that I found very interesting is that the language rules are quite similar between Dutch and English, right? Like the grammatical rules, syntax, structure, blah blah blah. And even where it's not similar, you understand that there is a rule, like subject, verb, object. In Dutch, the verb and the subject must always be together. I can't think of any case, at least so far, that I've learned where they are not together. So even if you're doing inversions, whatever, the verbs and the subject and the main verb must always be together. If there are two verbs, the second verb usually will go to the end of the sentence, blah blah blah. So they're like all these rules and everything. And obviously these rules also exist in English. I mean, I learned English, like grammar, structure, composition, all those things, from primary school up until secondary school, so for 12 years. So I know that these rules exist, and I learned a lot of them through my primary and secondary school journey. However, I don't remember any of the rules. I just know how to speak English. Like, I just speak English. I pay more attention to the grammar and structure because I'm learning Dutch and I'm trying to see the differences. So I know that, like, in Dutch now, you wouldn't say I just speak English, because just is separating I and speak, which are the I is the subject, speak is the main verb. In Dutch, you can't do that. You can't put anything in between. So, like, I'm realizing some of these grammatical differences because I am learning Dutch grammar. Like, I'm actually learning, these are the grammatical rules. This is how you frame a sentence. This is how you use verbs, adverbs, blah, blah, blah. Right. And I just find it so funny because I don't know, like, if you ask me English grammatical rule, anyone, I don't think that I can actually mention it, but I just quote unquote instinctively, intuitively know them because the way I speak, or my speaking and my writing is consistent with those grammatical rules, right? It's just there. And I think that is, like, I don't quote me on this, but I think that is when you know a language. Even though sometimes I still, like, as you speak your whatever language you speak, or that is your first language, primary language, mother tongue, whatever, sometimes you may not remember words. You may like, oh, what's the word for that thing? But you have a concept of it, you know it. But in a language that is not your primary language, I learned, like me with Dutch, I struggle. I do that a lot. Like, you see the difference. And sometimes the thinking is like, I actually don't know this word. Whereas in English, when I'm thinking about a word, I usually know the word. I just can't remember it, or I'm mixing up to another word. But in Dutch, a lot of time I find that I actually just don't know the word. Like, it's just not in my vocabulary. And I'm realizing and learning that to actually know a language, the thing is not even the grammar. Grammar is, like, you should know grammar. But in my, like, from just my experience of having learned German a bit, learning Dutch now, and knowing how to speak English and Yoruba, which I'll come to, the proof of actually knowing a language to me is vocabulary. The wider your vocabulary, the more words you know, the more confident you are in the language. Like, your grammar can be off, your structure can be off, all of this, blah, blah, blah. But if you're able to use the right vocabulary, I think you'll be understood. Like, whatever you're trying to say will generally be understood. Which I find very, and I'm only just realizing this now, like, because I'm seriously learning Dutch, because I just see so many times I want to say something and then I'm just stuck. Like, I know how to form the sentence, I know the grammatical structure, I know how to structure that sentence or structure what I want to say, but I just do not have the actual word to represent the thought that I have, and I have to think of something else. I have to now do, like, baby charades, and and say it's like a baby trying to play charades, or play taboo or something. So I find, yeah, that's one interesting thing. And coming to Yoruba, which is my second mother tongue, I learned Yoruba structure and grammar for all of primary school and maybe part of secondary school. I don't know. I didn't do Yoruba in secondary school, but all of primary school I learned Yoruba grammar structure, blah blah blah, the alphabets and everything. Um, but I, for the life of me, I don't know any grammatical rule in the Yoruba language. I only know I don't even know how to do tone marks. I don't get tone marks. I don't understand it. But that's by the way. And Yoruba is a very tonal language, so you can have words that are spelled the same way. That mean this. That mean different, like up to 7 different things, just based on how the tone marks are on the vowels. And I don't know them, so I can't even explain it. But that's by the way. Now, I learned Yoruba primarily, even though I learned Yoruba in primary school with like grammar, structure, learning the alphabets and everything. But primarily, I learned Yoruba because my dad would only speak Yoruba to us. Like, I don't remember, it wasn't all through my childhood, but growing up, there was a point where he just switched from like, okay, in this house, I'm no longer speaking English to you. If you speak English to me, I will not answer you. And that was just it. So that's how me and my siblings learned Yoruba. Um, and again, I noticed the same thing. My Yoruba is not, I can speak Yoruba, you understand what I'm saying, but my vocabulary is not broad. My vocabulary is very limited to the things that I was constantly exposed to. And even with English, like I have a good enough vocabulary in English, but there are some settings that I will be in that I don't know the words because that is not my daily life. It's not my, I'm not exposed to it daily. And I was talking to a native Dutch speaker about this as well, and he was saying that his English is really great in business context. Like he does, if he's talking in business, blah blah, he's really great. But when he's talking about his hobbies, like say gardening, for example, he struggles with communicating as fluently as he would in a business context in English because he interacts with those things mostly in Dutch, like primarily in Dutch, and people he's interacting with in that context also are speaking Dutch. So the problem is he doesn't have enough of a vocabulary related to gardening to communicate in English. However, in other contexts, he's fine. So if I take it back to Yoruba a bit, I have very limited vocabulary. If I want to talk about like the internet and browsing and blah 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 in Yoruba, I'm going to so struggle. Although I know some of the vocabulary because when I did some research some 5 or so years ago, I did it in a context where we were talking to primarily Yoruba speakers. So there was a translator who was helping us with talking to the people and interpreting the questions and the responses. So I learned a few words and improve my vocabulary in that manner. But in general, I can't have a conversation with somebody about the internet and technology fully Yoruba, like without interpreting it with English or anything, because I don't have that extent, vocabulary to that extent. And I see the same thing happening also with Dutch. There are things that I can, if you ask me about my work, if you ask me about traveling, I can mostly speak very comfortably in Dutch about those things because I have, that is usually the context that you will learn, at least in my Dutch classes. A lot of the examples are around studying, work, traveling, those kinds of topics. But in some other areas, I will be so lost. Like I can't have any conversation with anybody about gardening in Dutch. But anyway, yeah, this is what I wanted to talk about. And I think that back to what I was saying about vocabulary as like, for me, at least the signal of dexterity with a language is that when someone was asking me like, how do I know, beyond getting the B2 certificate, how do I know that I've actually learned Dutch? And I said that for me, it's when I'm able to have a full-blown conversation in Dutch without having to reach for the words, without having to really think about, oh, what's the word for what I want to say? And also to be able to also speak without having to think about the grammatical rules, like, oh, have I split the verb properly? Did I put the verb in the right place? Did I conjugate properly? Because sometimes I make those conjugation mistakes when I'm speaking. I use the conjugated verb for he, she when I say I. So instead of saying I go, I will say I goes in the Dutch equivalent, right? So sometimes that happens. So when I stop making those mistakes and when I'm able to have conversations without struggling for the words, then I know that I am proficient in Dutch. And that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Bye. There's still over 100 episodes to go. I still need questions. I still need suggestions of who to talk to. I still need people who want to come on to talk about something to fill the form. So please do that. Thank you very much. And yeah, do like, share, subscribe if you found it interesting, insightful, and all the nice things. Bye.